at my school, I teach 8th grade social studies, earth science, and reading. So Nearpod has helped me with all three of those subjects, like trying to make sure that students are staying engaged at all times. They're interactive activities as you go along so that everyone's, giving extended responses or answering multiple choice questions and so on. So the first page of Nearpod, when you open it up, looks like this. When the kids go to put their code in for your presentation, they will put that up here in the top where it says enter code. So when I open mine up, you'll have to sign up, and you can sign up for free. There's a free version, and then there's a paid version. I'm a gold user, and that's just because I use it like all the time. So just kind of keep that in mind. But definitely is 100% worth that money. So you can go to, I'm going to go to my own Nearpod, but you can like join lesson from the menu. There's all kinds of resources on how it works and like the communities and stuff. So, and if your school or district wants to get involved, of course, there's all kinds of things there too. So I'm going to go into my dashboard, my own thing here. So what it does is it opens up all my files for all the Nearpods. And actually, it's just like a PowerPoint presentation, only your students are linked onto it, and they have the opportunity to answer questions, draw, circle things, all kinds of neat things. Let's see. Right here where it says Nearpod Lesson Library, if you are looking for something quickly because you want to teach them something, a lesson, but you don't have the resources yet to kind of put it together quickly, or you weren't sure where to go with things, you can go to the Nearpod Lesson Library. It will open up all kinds of things for you to pick from, like, top social studies. To the left, this is where you can pick things by Common Core State Standards, the science standards, social studies standards, or if you can pick, I'm from Illinois, so I would pick Illinois kind of thing. And then it will take you to specifics for your grade and content. Okay. And so all of those things would be something that I would be looking forward to. So if you wanted to open up one of these, they do let you preview the lesson before you buy it, which is really nice. You open it up, it'll tell you what standard for your state, or if you wanted to go Common Core, whatever. This one's a $4.99, so usually they're $2.99 to $4.99. And then you can preview through it to see what it's going to teach you. Usually it always starts out with objectives. If your district and your administrator makes you put the objectives into the lesson before you're teaching your lesson, this is kind of cool because they always have that objective there to tell you what's going to happen. So you always start out, with some kind of content, and you're talking about, vocabulary, or in this case, nomadic lifestyles. And then it gives you an activity. So this one just happens to be make a poster supporting the nomadic lifestyle. Okay. First farmers, then it's going to ask you to buy, but you can continue to preview. You can continue on looking at it and seeing what it's asking you to do. Every once in a while, a video will pop up, and you can play that video to see, what it is. And then there's open-ended questions that are always part of that opportunity. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my own and show you how I built some of mine. You can build your go back home here. You can build your program or your Nearpod right from Google Slides also. So if you're a Google school and you go through Google Classroom, I'll show you how that all works too. So go into my history folder, and let's see, one of them let's see if I can find one that might have some good, not sure. Let's go back to maybe just the Inca, Maya, Aztec one. Where did it go? Okay, let's go to that unit. Now these 4 that I have in here, these are ones that I purchased, and so those are mine. I can still use them. I can add to them. I can modify them, whatever I need to do. I like the Mayan one because there's a lot of they call VR, virtual reality shows on there. Can you turn that fan off? I'm in the middle of a video. So when you open up the lesson, you can do a live lesson where you are completely in control of the presentation. When you hit live, they will put in this code, and then when they put in that code, they see exactly what you see. And so, like when you do these codes, you can share them through Google Classroom. You can share them through Remind. The Microsoft team is also connected to this, right? You can send them a link to their email or social media, but this is the code that they're going to put in. So they put in the code. It's only going to ask them for their name, and it might say other. So if you wanted them to put their name, first initial, and then third hour, because that's when you have them, then you can kind of gear that to the way you want it. Okay, so we're into the presentation, and this is what it looks like from their point of view. If for some reason they get logged off, they always have that code in the corner for them to log back in. So I'm going on my way, and it tells I can take these kind of slides out. If I don't want them to see the materials and preparation slides or whatever that they have put in, you can take all this out. Sometimes, like this let's get started slide, I would take that out. I don't need that. They know we're getting started. So now you might want to leave some directions in there so you can tell them what's going to happen. Paired discussions are kind of cool. But then the VR stuff that's involved in some of these VR ones is neat because you can go to these places, you can explore, take a look around as if you were actually there. So that's pretty cool. When I do these, I ask them to come up with 3 things that they notice, 3 things that they can point out to me. But, and then we talk about those or we discuss those. So on the next slide, we go to somewhere else, and I ask them to pull out 3 things or maybe similarities or differences from the VR before. So they might notice that, there's, this one is smaller than some of the ones at the other site. Or they might notice that, there's just a lot of stairs. I always hope that someone notices how close the rocks are without using mortar, because that's a big deal in the Mayan Empire and Inca Empire. So I always hope that someone points that part out. But you might put, or they could point out the lack of, things or lack of people at this one site. So we go on the next virtual field trip, and I ask them to look at similarities and differences and things like that. So some of these, you could put in one of these and talk about it and, make some comments about it or have an extended response. But also you could just, you could do like a multiple choice kind of thing. Like the next thing, how do you think the 3 sites that you just explored relate? So this is an extended response. The report will give you the student's name and their answer. This is where too, sometimes I will hide the students' names. I will click on this so that they cannot see whose answer it is. And then as I'm watching the answers pop up, and your participation should eventually get to 100%. That is when everyone has submitted their answer. And then you can go through and be like, hey, someone didn't use a capital letter at the beginning of their sentence, or punctuation at the end, or hey, this word should always be capitalized. So this is kind of my opportunity too to point out grammar mistakes, because the students' names aren't connected to it. So it's not, it's not there to embarrass them. It's just kind of to point those things out. Okay, next one. So the next one, you actually go to Google Maps and they tell you to go to these certain sites. So it's pretty cool. And then the question is, what do you think the location of each ancient site can tell us about the Mayan civilization? So it's a primary source analysis. They're turning their VR, moment into a primary source analysis. And now they've gone to each location and they can tell you about that civilization without even having to read it. They can tell you about the pyramids. They can tell you about, the rocks being close together without mortar. They can tell you about how they're arranged across from each other, which probably has something to do with, religion and symbolism. But this is kind of cool because there's another opportunity to be like, hey, somebody needs to make sure they're putting capital letters at the beginning. Or you can also say, I want 2 sentences or 3 sentences. And then you set a timer, or I set a timer. You don't have to set a timer, but I set a timer and I say, you have, 2 minutes to hit submit, and then I'm moving on. And then at the 2 minutes, they have to submit whatever they have, because 2 minutes is ample time to put, at least 1 sentence. So you can time it better that way so you're not waiting on people all the time. Let's see. So this would be the Google Maps. So you click on this and go to Google Maps. And then there's some more questions. Most of these are all open-ended questions. So I'll go back home. You can resume these later. So say you don't get through the whole Nearpod in your class time period. You can say, yes, I want to, do you want to leave the session? Yes. And then it'll tell you when you go to, let me go back there and I'll show you what it looks like. You go back here and you hit live and it'll say, hey, do you want to open up the one that was, connected to this code, or do you need to launch a new one? And so this also will pop up if, say you have you're teaching 4 or 5 classes of this and you're using this 5 times a day. You'll launch a new lesson 5 different times, and then you kind of put down your code and you can tell what hour it was opened, and then you can go back to that for each class, which is kind of cool. All right, let's look at, I'll go back to my library real quick. For social studies, there's this one on Native Americans that I did. Let's see. Do I still have it? Roanoke. So let's look at this one in live. Because you can do student paced also. If you want them to do a student paced Nearpod, I usually do them for extra, like those kids that want extra points and they want that challenge and they really love Nearpods because they're interactive. Sometimes I'll just assign those, and whoever does them gets the points, and whoever doesn't get to it, I'll just drop that grade. So that's kind of how I do student paced. Or if a student is absent and you did this, during their class time, and you did it live during the class time, you can always send it to their Google Classroom as a student paced presentation so that they can still log on and do it, and then you can go check the report and see how they did on their own, kind of thing. So you get a different code each time. This will be the code for this one. And so this is if I was teaching Southwest or Southeast Native Americans. So I would start, let's see, is this 2? Okay, this is when they're signing in. So slide 2 is just kind of like the introduction slide. We talk about what the names of the Southeast tribes are, like some of the most popular names, the big names, right? We might go to the location and we'll talk about the location where they're at, the shelter. So a lot of this is, let me go back real quick. So we start out with a little bit of content. And in this one, of course, we talk about the wigwams, the longhouses, and the chickee huts. And so we get a good visual of what those are. And then I'm going to ask them to find the wigwam in the picture and circle it. Just kind of, it gives you an idea that they're paying attention. And they will be paying attention because when this screen is up, everybody's picture is going to be up there. And you can then unhide them so that they can, take pride and say, hey, look at mine, there's mine, kind of thing. But this whole page will be filled with different boxes that either has the students' names on them or you can hide it, but you'll get to see what they've drawn. Okay, so my first rule is during a Nearpod, if I ask you to draw something, it better be appropriate or I make them shut it off and they lose all their points for the day. So they know to just circle it, and before they hit submit, it better just, they better fall direction. So that's kind of my thing. Next one, draw a circle around the longhouse. So, and put an X over the chicky hut. So now they got to find the longhouse, right? They're going to circle the longhouse. They find the chicky hut, and then they're going to put the X on the chicky hut. So this is kind of, here's the chicky hut. So this will give them a little bit different directions, but they know they have to follow those directions before they hit submit, or I will, close it out. Okay. So then we talk about food, clothing, ceremonies, some of the Southeast tribes today. Then we talk about, what do you see? Who do you see? When did this event take place? And how do we know that? Why is this happening? And where is the event taking place? So we do a little bit of a source analysis when we look at the picture and we ask all these questions. This is how I teach them to analyze, primary sources such as pictures. Explain what is happening in the picture and why. So after we've explained everything and we've talked about the picture, then we'll do a small analysis where, we talk about it and then they can write in what they want. And as soon as it hits, 100% participation, then we move on. So this gives them a little bit, like after they tell me their information and their, basically a prediction about what they think about the picture, I will go over it in detail and I will talk about what the photo is, what is really going on in the photo. Another one, what do you see? Who do you see? When did this take place? They give me another short analysis, and then I let them know, what it is and what they're seeing. And then here's the Northeast natives. We'll talk about the big tribe names, like the big 5 or the big 6. We'll go through what, some basics, and we'll talk about what those people did, the Algonquin, Oneidas. And then, do you think that the Native Americans were civilized before Europeans arrived? So some of these questions don't have to be right or wrong. Like you can take a poll to see, so far after they've learned some of the information about that civilization or what they're doing, then you can ask maybe a poll question, which is cool. Do you think they could have lived like the Native Americans or do you think you could have lived like the Native Americans before the Europeans? This is always an interesting poll. I get a lot of chatter and discussion when people are doing this. So see, along the way, there's all kinds of activities that you can add to it. If you wanted to add an activity, and I'll show you again how this works, you can do web content. Like you can go to a website on your way there, which is kind of cool because this sets up your lesson, like your lesson plan. It almost helps me because I can't get ahead of myself and I don't jump to things that I'm not ready for, which I've had a problem with that in the past, because this lays everything out. I can't jump to that website or I can't jump to that video before I've done, these other things. You can add an open-ended question, draw it. You can add a whole nother slide of information kind of thing. You can add a true or false question just to double check that they're paying attention. So it's pretty nice. Okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to say yes. We could resume it later if we really wanted to. Let's go ahead and show, let me think. I'll go ahead and put my Aztec slides in. I'm going to go ahead and hit edit on this one, and I'll show you how you can use Google Slides. Because when you go to edit this, you can edit it right here in Nearpod. You can add your slides. When you go to add slides, if you had, say you were in PowerPoint and you turned all of your PowerPoints into JPEG files, or I think you can turn them into PDF files and they'll work the same way. But when you go to add a slide, you're adding content, web content, or you're adding activities. And when you go to add activities, there's all kinds of things. There's this new thing called time to climb, And that's where there's a multiple choice quiz, and they're trying to beat each other to the top, meaning like they're trying to answer the questions as quickly as possible and with the correct answer. So that's a fun game to have like in the middle of your lesson after you've, talked a little bit about the content. Of course, the open-ended questions, those are probably my favorite because it makes them right. Like even if it's a sentence, they have to write it out. And I'm always like capital letter, punctuation, make sure things spelled correctly, make sure it has a subject and a predicate, it makes sense. Matching pairs are fun for vocabulary. So if you wanted to start out with the vocabulary to see what they knew before you got into it, that's kind of cool. And then at the end, you could do another matching one and just copy and paste that slide for the end and see if they did a better job at the end than they did the beginning. So those are neat. Or just, do a matching at the end after you've taught. A short quiz. I don't know if you know, like you could give a small video, and then ask a couple questions about the video, doing that, or give them some content, have a small 3-question quiz. So, and then you can take a grade on that. Draw It is one of my favorite because you can circle things on maps. You can circle things on pictures. You can, you can ask them, what's the first thing that you think of when you hear of, the Black Plague, kind of thing. And you might see like the symbolism come out. And when they see Black Plague, they might show you all kinds of things like the beak to nose mask, or, like a cross, or just death in general. And so some of those can be kind of dark, but it's kind of neat to see what the first thing that comes to them is. So you kind of have an idea of what they already know, like where to go with that. You can collaborate, which is neat. I like to use these when we have read some, fiction, like a historical fiction or something, and I'm going to ask about a character, or I'm going to ask, if I read this to you, tell me exactly what time period you thought that would be. The collaborate part, though, it shows up as this, it looks like a cork board. And you can change it if you want. You can change it to look different, like things. But it's cool because you enter a topic and you enter a discussion, and then their stuff comes up as it's like, clipped to a cork board, or it looks like, kind of like a Post-it note. It's pretty neat. And then you can see everybody's ideas all on one page, which is pretty cool. Let me go to add a slide again. Activity. So the matching things is pretty cool because you just if you add a pair to your matching, you put in, you can put in an image if you want. You can put in the text if you want. So you can do term and definition. It's kind of up to you. That's what that looks like. Quiz. You can actually add an image to this also. You put your question in, you put your answers, you tell it which one is correct, and then you can add a question down here. So, or you can add an answer. You can make as many answers as you want. These could be true and false even if you wanted to. You can duplicate them. So if the answers are the same but the question's different, you could duplicate it. There's the delete button. There is like drag to reorder. So if you're like, oh, I kind of wanted that down at the bottom, so you can do that also. Lots of cool things that you can do with those. Do you want to cancel? Yes. Okay. So another thing would be, the time to climb. I don't know if it'll show me. Yeah, it looks just like a quiz, but it turns out differently. And you can choose your type of answers. Like you could do image answers if you wanted to, and you just select images. That one, though, you'd have to do it, and you'd have to see it on their screens to understand what that means. After you do it a couple times, you'll see it's very graphic on theirs. It almost looks like a kid's game, but they really do like it. They have a good time with it. The Draw It is easy. The Draw It gives you you can upload any kind of background image you want for them to be able to, comment on it. You can even add, say, like a diagram or a map, and you have to pick out certain things on the map that you want them to label, or draw a circle around an area. Like if you were doing Native Americans and you're like, hey, I want you to focus on, this corner, show me what we're studying, what states, would cover this kind of thing. And so they could draw that. that way you kind of know that they know where you're at also. So drawing part is pretty cool. Let's see. Time to climb. Open-ended questions. I showed you a lot of those so they could, give you their response in complete sentences. There's the poll. Oh, fill in the blank is pretty cool. So fill in the blank. You can kind of pick out your text style that you want, but you can type or paste in here. And I could say, for example, the Algonquin natives liked to, or no, let's see, not liked. How about fought with the Iroquois for many years. Okay, well, Grammarly's telling me that Iroquois is wrong, so I need to change that. Okay, there we go. So I can take, if I go, I can make a paragraph, I can make different sentences, I can go to next, and then I click on the words that I want to put into my box. So I want to take Algonquin out. And then that way, because they'll look at this and they'll be like, oh, the natives that fought with the Iroquois were the Algonquin, so I'll choose that. And then, but you can have all kinds of sentences with all kinds of words. And then when you open it up on the board, you want to make sure that you have hide students' names so that they cannot see the answers. Sometimes when you go to turn the page, the whole paragraph is up there and they can see the answer. So you kind of want them to do it before you give them those answers. But that's how you make sure that they don't see the answers first, as you've hid students' response. Okay, so that's all that. And then you go to done and it'll give them a word bank, and it's pretty cool. Okay, so let's look at, what's the other one that we didn't do yet? Oh, cancel. Oh, memory test, that's just kind of like the matching. It's very, very similar, only like you can keep flipping them over until you get them. A poll is like, it looks like a quiz, only yours not a certain answer. You're just asking people their opinion about things, which is neat. So all kinds of opportunities here. Web content. You just put in the website and it'll take you and it'll have it pop up so that they know exactly where to go next. And then it'll take them outside of the Nearpod to go to the website, and then you can give them directions on, if you need them to do a web quest or a short web quest to go look for an answer somewhere or look at something, and then you can come back to the Nearpod to answer questions on it if you wanted to. Content, though, all kinds of content. So I told you about the VRs. Like, you can take a virtual field trip. You could say things like, I don't know, well, here's like a lot of the different ones that you can go to. So if you were studying any of these places, let's see, New York, Times Square, that'd be fun. But there's a lot of different VRs already set up, but you can search for those also. Pretty cool. Let's see, I don't know if I've ever done this one. Oh, so there's like just different simulations. So if I were to go to like a science and math, it looks like different simulations that you can pick from. I've never done one of these because I didn't even know it was there, but looks pretty cool. Definitely a slide. You could do a Nearpod 3D. These are cool. So if I wanted to show the Aztec temple or whatever, I can give them a nice 3D look or 3D version of that, so it's pretty neat. Content. You can do videos. You can do videos from YouTube. You could do Sway. You could do a PDF file, which is kind of cool. Just show them, like, if you were handing out a worksheet, you might put the worksheet in there and talk about that way they have a visual up on your smartboard also. You could do an audio if you're having them listen to, say, an audio journal. And then you could also make like a slideshow, which is kind of like a bunch of pictures, which is neat. Not sure what Sway is. Oh, that's cool. So there's all kinds of different things here. Historical events and figures. I think for this one, I don't know. Lots of cool. Oh, there's colonization of America. Let's see what it looks like. Oh, we might have to just see it by the student's point of view, but all different opportunities. It's really cool how you can set everything up. Make sure that you title your lesson for sure. In the settings, it gives you a different thing too, like where you can set it up by, what grade this would be for, what subject are you focused on, kind of thing. Make sure you put in your lesson title and a description of what it is. I didn't do this at first, and then I regretted it because I went back and I'm like, I can't remember what I put in there. So I always use this to kind of put in, there's a VR, there's a 3D, there's a quiz, there's a brain pop video or a YouTube video, and I always list that in there so when I need to go to the information, it reminds me what I put in it. Okay, so let's go back to home. And if you are using, say, let me find so this is my Aztec slideshow that I send out to my kids. All my stuff's on Google Slides and Google Classroom. So we have like an intro slide kind of thing. Everything looks like an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper so that if I need to print it out for people who don't have internet, I can, kind of thing. And then it just has some information. But up here on the add-on, you have a Pear Deck, which Pear Deck is kind of nice too. That allows you to do kind of like a Nearpod version, only, I don't know, you'd have to experiment with that. It's really nice though also. But if you're going to Nearpod, which is my favorite, you can open up Nearpod in your slides and you can start making those activities in between your slides so that your students, when you're doing the information, you can check for understanding based on that. Okay, and this does not give any of your students, seeing all of the stuff that we just looked at on the Nearpod is now an add-on on Google Slides, which is pretty cool. Okay, I can edit, I can add right now. I can go ahead after. You see how I have like a main idea and detail. I always have them pull out what the main idea is, pull out what the detail is. And so, I could add in between here, say, a fill in the blank. And then that whole thing pops up. And I could say, the Toltec Empire, let's see, ended in about 1100 or AD, 1100. Okay, and so then I could pull out the word Toltec, and I could pull out that if I wanted to. And then it would put that in there for me. So, but I would suggest if you're going to do that with your Google Slide. And so now when I go to, save and go to Nearpod, now my Nearpod presentation it's already in here. It'll save all of that for me from my Google Slides. So it's really nice. Okay, if you have any extra questions, I'm going to go ahead and you even have like a sub-plans. I've never used that before, but that's a good idea. Teacher resources, but your reports are here too. I guess I should show you what reports look like. Let's see, what have I taken reports on? My Think Like a Historian, which is spelled wrong, by the way. It should be Think Like a Historian, not an historian. I have to fix that. Okay, so I'm going to open this up. Let's just go to preview. And this one I made up by myself from Google Slides, and then I just stuck it in here. But I always do this at the beginning of the school year to start everybody out. And there's an open-ended question, of course. Why do we study history? Okay, so I have all this. Measuring time. We talk about calendars and timelines. We take a little quiz. Like how many days are on the Western calendar, things like that. What does BC mean? What does AD mean? What does BCE and CE mean? So we talk about those. Reading a timeline. So after all of this is said and done, I have them do a couple questions on some timelines to make sure that they know how to read them. And I get those off of iExcel. iExcel is great at having cool timelines to read to practice. So that's where I got those. Charts and diagrams and graphs. So I'll have some charts and diagrams that we can read and go over. So now what I want to do is, if I close out of this real quick, let's see. Let's go back to my library. So think like a historian had some, where did it go? Think like a historian. I'll use this one. I go to the 3 dots and I ask it for the reports. You can share them. You can duplicate them. I've duplicated this one so that I had 3 different reports, but come to find out I didn't really have to do that. You can remove it. You can export it as a PDF if someone doesn't have internet and they're wanting to do your lesson. But here's reports. These are nice. This one don't have any. Let's go back to my library. Let's go to, I think one of those did. Now I don't know which one it was. Let's see if this one does. Okay, here we go. So I click on this, and this one had 25 students that worked on it. So I open up my reports, and it gives me all kinds of data as far as it'll tell me how they did on the quiz and what the quiz was. It'll show me the open-ended questions, what they were, and I can just look and see what Allie said, what Ashlyn said, what Blake said, and I can grade those accordingly if I wanted to. I didn't have any drawlets or matching pairs, collaborate. I didn't do any of the other ones, but this gives you the summary, and then you can kind of go and see, oh, well, the open-ended one, they did. The drawlet, only some of them did, right? And so it looks like we might not have gotten through the whole thing. So then you can go to downloads, and you can download it as a PDF if you want to keep all the data. So all kinds of cool stuff. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know.